This week on ANN, Adventists and Muslims in Ghana come to a resolution after a land dispute led to the burning of an Adventist church.
The Seventh-day Adventist Church prepares to open a medical school in the Philippines.
And the church in the Northern Asia-Pacific region hosts its first conference for youth ministry leaders.
These stories and more coming up.
This is ANN, a service of the Seventh-day Adventist World Church. Thanks so much for joining us this week.
First in the news, tensions have subsided between Adventists and Muslims in the central region of Ghana after a group of Muslim youth burned down an Adventist church last month. Local leaders of the region urged the Muslim community to ensure that the 12 people suspected of the crime were arrested and prosecuted. According to Ghana news agency, initial investigations revealed that the suspects were motivated by a dispute over whether Adventists had right to the land the church occupied. According to the Adventist Church, the land was legally acquired, and this was confirmed by the courts. However, some in the Muslim community still claimed ownership of the land. Representatives from the two religious institutions were able to broker a peace deal, but they underscored that the criminal aspect of the case must be pursued.
The Adventist Church will soon open its first medical school in Asia. The Philippines Commission on Higher Education recently granted approval for the College of Medicine at Adventist University of the Philippines. Classes are slated to begin in August with 30 students. Adventist leaders said the school will serve the church's entire Southern Asia-Pacific region. Church leaders said opening a medical school in this region has been a goal for more than 30 years. The College of Medicine will be the denomination's 6th medical school worldwide.
Hundreds were inspired to motivate young people to be more like Jesus last month during a historic Youth Leaders Congress sponsored by the Seventh-day Adventist Church in the Northern Asia-Pacific region. The church hosted its first Adventist Youth Leaders Congress on the campus of Taiwan Adventist College from February 11 to 14. Nearly 450 youth leaders, advisors, camp directors and staff attended from Taiwan, Korea, Japan, China and Mongolia. Attendees learned how to optimize youth ministries through presentations from church leaders, including Adventist Youth Director Gilbert Kanji and Associate Youth Director Jaiwan Moon. Participants also had opportunities to receive more training in youth ministries through various workshops, including mission, leadership, community service, and discipleship training.
Nearly 200 children from the Arabian Gulf were encouraged to live for God during their first Pathfinder Camporee in the region. According to the Adventist Review, the 3-day Camporee took place in the United Arab Emirates. Pathfinders came from numerous countries including Oman, Kuwait, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia. Jonathan Tahel, Associate Youth Director for the Adventist Church, told the participants, "We expect you to let your light shine everywhere you go, so that when people see you, they will know that you are the children of God."
As a result of an evangelistic effort within a Togo prison, 30 inmates decided to seal their commitment to God through baptism. The baptism took place in a newly constructed chapel that was funded by the Seventh-day Adventist World Church. According to the Adventist Review, Ted Wilson, president of the Adventist Church, approved the donation of $6,000 after receiving a request from the church's Eastern Sahel Union Mission, which is based in Togo. The chapel has an outdoor baptistry, benches for 100 people, and electricity to run lights, fans, and a sound system. The evangelistic series was conducted by Adventist member Bruno Amar, who was arrested in 2012 on what church leaders say were false allegations, and he is currently serving a life sentence in prison. In addition to baptisms, 120 inmates also participated in a communion service.
In light of the recent controversy surrounding vaccinating children in the United States and other countries, the Seventh-day Adventist Church this week released its official stance on the issue. The statement says, "We encourage responsible immunization and vaccination, and have no religious or faith-based reason not to encourage our adherents to responsibly participate in protective and preventive immunization programs. The statement goes on to say the choice not to be immunized is not and should not be seen as the dogma nor the doctrine of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. You can visit to news.adventist.org to see the full statement.
Coming up, the U.S. Supreme Court hears a case on religious liberty that is backed by the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
Then Esther sent this reply to Mordecai. Go and gather all the Jews who are in Susa together, and pray and fast for me. Do not eat or drink anything for 3 days and nights. I and my maidens will fast as you do. After that, I will go to the king, even though it is against the law. And if I perish, I perish.
Welcome back. And now for more news from our global church community.
The Supreme Court of the United States last week heard oral argument in a case that examined whether an employer could refuse to hire an applicant based on their religious practices and observances. The Seventh-day Adventist Church filed an amicus brief, or friend of the court brief, for the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission versus Abercrombie & Fitch stores. The case involved Samantha Eloff, a Muslim woman who was denied a job at Abercrombie because her hijab head covering violated corporate policy. Church leaders who attended the argument said the Supreme Court justices appeared to favour Eloff during the hearing. A date for the decision has yet to be determined, but we will bring you updates in the months ahead.
A leading news organization in the United States recently featured the Adventist lifestyle among the ways a person can live a long, healthy life. During CNN's 30-minute program, Vital Science with Dr. Sanjay Gupta, Dr. Richard Hart, president of Loma Linda University Health, shared that one of the key factors to having a better life is having a purpose in what you are doing. According to the Adventist Review, Gupta also focused on commonalities within the world's 5 blue zones, which are areas of the world where people are known to live more than 100 years. Loma Linda is the only blue zone in the United States. To find out where you can watch the program, visit news.adventist.org.
An Adventist pastor and elder in England recently had an opportunity to meet with the British Prime Minister. David Cameron met with local religious leaders in the English city of Bedford to deliver a key government policy statement on marriage. During the conversation with the Prime Minister, Sam Davies, pastor of the Bedford Central Seventh-day Adventist Church, was impressed to hear Cameron say, "Families are the bedrock of our society, and there is something special about the institution of marriage." According to the Adventist Church in Britain, the Church's leadership has submitted a series of concerns to the government recently regarding same-sex marriage, which was instituted by the current Parliament.
An Adventist college in the U.S. state of Nebraska will endow a new academic chair thanks to a $2 million gift from Adventist Health System. Union College told the Adventist Review the funds will create a permanent chair for a professor in its division of business and computer science. The Florida-based Adventist Health System has given $2 million donation to 3 colleges this year. The others include Andrews University and Southwestern Adventist University.
In Australia, 67 cyclists biked more than 300 kilometres or 186 miles to raise funds for Adventist humanitarian organisations. Record in Focus has this report.
It's always gonna be an uphill battle. Sometime you're gonna have to choose. It's found on Isaiah 35:3 and it says, strengthen my weak hands, make firm my feeble knees. And I just thought, man, how appropriate. just repeat that in your head, just cling to that verse, and yeah, I'm sure you guys will make it.
The 25,000 Spins ride raised nearly $120,000 for 5 charities: Compassion, Watoto, the Fred Hollows Foundation, the Botswana Orphan Project, and the Adventist Development and Relief Agency. In just a few days, a second 25,000 Spins fundraising ride will tackle the spectacular mountain scenery around Queenstown in South New Zealand.
We recently reported how an Adventist campsite in Canada was forced to temporarily close after it was hit by an ice storm. The storm that hit Camp Hope's property created damages that added up to $300,000. According to the Adventist Review, in spite of the high repair bills, the camp reopened. Its director is rejoicing that nobody was hurt and damages to the building were minimal. Most of the damages on the property included damaged trees and power lines. Fernita Buddy shared tips on what institutions should do in the face of property damage.
The first thing an organization should do should be to mitigate the loss, which means stop the loss from spreading. If that means turning off the main water pump, if that means sandbagging to keep the water from spreading, that also means contacting your local fire department to help put out a fire, whatever needs to be done to mitigate and to stop the loss from spreading. The second thing should be that an organization should call their insurance company. In the case of Camp Hope, the day after the ice storm, they called us, which is a good thing because we were able to get our team on the ground at their camp as soon as possible to begin to examine the damage. And unfortunately, we are realizing as they're cleaning up with their volunteers that there's been more damage than anticipated. However, our teams here at Adventist Risk Management have been able to send payment, partial claims payment, to get them started and rebuilding. The third thing an organization should do should be to document the loss. That means taking photos, writing down what happened, when it happened, so that you can report that to your insurance company. Oftentimes, the insurance company is waiting for you, the insured, to send the proper documentation, and that will hold up your claim. And so the sooner you can send in that proper and complete documentation, the sooner you can receive your claims payment and restore and get back to business.
And finally in the news this week, if you are a youth ministries leader in your local church, conference or union, you may want to make sure you have Sabbath March 21 circled in your calendar. That is the day the Seventh-day Adventist Church has designated as Global Youth Day. Youth and young adults will be urged to skip church, to be the sermon through acts of kindness and community service. For more information, visit gcyouthministries.org.
Still ahead, learn more about a spiritual video podcast for children.
But up next, find out what's in the latest edition of Adventist World Magazine.
Well, I do pray for them, just like my family and friends and neighbors.
I pray that I will keep on going through my hard weeks of school.
I pray for my little brother. Please pray 7 in the morning, 7 in the evening, 7 days a week.
When I lived in Japan, I had a friend who was an artist. She painted beautiful, intricate designs on silk fabric that were used to make kimonos. She invited me to her studio, and when I walked in, I saw this long table in the middle of this room. And on this table was about 10 to 12 yards of silk fabric. The work that she would do was so detailed, so intricate, but yet so amazingly beautiful. She would take her time, and sometimes it would take her 6 months to finish a 10-yard panel. I visited her one day. But she was doing something very interesting. With a magnifying glass in hand, she was going over every single inch of that fabric, checking her work to make sure that everything was good. It took her a long time because she did it slowly and carefully. And then she put down the magnifying glass, and with a smile of satisfaction on her face, she said, "It is good." The Bible tells us that God created this world and all living things in 6 days, and He rested after He was finished, because all was good.
Welcome back. Stephen Chavez shares a preview of Adventist World magazine.
Sometimes you hear stories about people who risk everything for God's kingdom. But often those stories are centuries or decades old. In the March issue of Adventist World, our cover story is about a couple in South Africa who came very close to losing everything because of their commitment to build something for God's kingdom. Their story, Builders for God, chronicles Zuki and Polly's determination to follow the Apostle Paul's counsel. Whatever you do, do it all for the glory of God. It's a story that will inspire you and challenge you. In the article Visions of God, author Paulo Candido de Oliveira describes 3 characteristics of God, among others, that are described in the Psalms. The article is part of our ongoing series about Adventist fundamental beliefs, this one about God the Father. And if you've ever wondered about the phrase, "He was gathered to His people," when referring to death, our resident Bible scholar, Angel Manuel Rodriguez, explains what the Bible says about death and why, for Christians, death is nothing to be feared. Finally, this month we feature a beautiful story about a young orphan living at Oasis Children's Village in Mexico, who caught the attention of some supporters of International Children's Care. They arranged for the child to receive a life-changing operation. You'll want to read the story and see the photos in this month's issue. You can access these and many more articles at AdventistWorld.org. Happy reading.
Have you been searching for an alternative way to present the Christian principles to your children? GraceLink is your one-stop shop for resources for kids ages 2 through 9. Here's one of many videos that brings the Sabbath School lessons to life.
Hello everyone, it's Aunt Fernita. Today's story is called Judging Jesus. The memory verse is from Isaiah chapter 53, verse 5. But He was pierced for our transgressions, and by His wounds we are healed. The message is, I praise Jesus for saving me. When Jesus was arrested in the Garden of Gethsemane, all the disciples ran away. The mob followed the soldiers down the hill. They made an evil parade with torches lighting the way. John watched as the parade moved across the brook. What am I doing? John asked himself. I should follow the mob to find out what will happen to Jesus. He and Peter followed the mob toward the home of Annas, toward the palace of Caiaphas, the high priest. When they arrived at Caiaphas' palace, the priest let John in because they knew him. John turned and saw Peter walking near the gate. Peter was hiding in the dark outside. He did not want people to see him there. John went back to the woman at the gate. Please let my friend in, he said, and she did. She kept watching Peter as he moved to the fire in the courtyard. Finally, she asked him, Aren't you one of Jesus' disciples? Oh, "No," said Peter as he turned to warm himself. Just then Jesus was led onto the big porch beside the courtyard. John pushed as close as he could. There were bruises on Jesus' face. He walked slowly, painfully, as if his whole body ached. Caiaphas began to ask Jesus what he believed, even though he already knew. Jesus said, "I have always talked openly. Your people know me." A big, muscular guard frowned. He swung at Jesus' face and hit him hard. Jesus was in pain, yet he stood firm like a king. At the gate, the servant girl said, "This fellow was with Jesus of Nazareth." And Peter strongly denied it. There was more questioning back near the fire. "Aren't you one of his disciples?" Again, Peter strongly denied knowing Jesus. Then a rooster crowed. Peter had denied knowing Jesus 3 times. Peter looked up and saw Jesus looking at him. There was no anger in the look, just love. Then Peter rushed out the gate of the courtyard. The trial went on. Caiaphas asked Jesus another question. Jesus calmly said, "You have said it right. I am the Son of God." Caiaphas leaped from his golden throne. "That's it!" he screamed. "Jesus says he is like God." He was so angry that he ripped his beautiful priestly robe from top to bottom. Some who saw it thought, "This is against the law. The high priest is to die if he tears his robe. They will kill Caiaphas." But the mob didn't notice Caiaphas. They were too busy shouting, "Death! Death to Jesus! Take him to Pilate! Put him to death!" People were pushing at Jesus, poking him and hitting him. Soldiers ran in and grabbed Jesus, pulling him away. Roman soldiers formed a circle around him and hurried him toward Pilate's palace. Within a few hours, Jesus would go to Pilate, to Herod, and back to Pilate. Jesus would be beaten and mocked through it all. What suffering! He willingly suffered that you and I may know God's love.
To see more videos, visit gracelink.net.
While browsing on Facebook, have you ever wanted to read an article or watch a video, but you just didn't have the time? For this week's social media report, Angela Taipei shares how you can save Facebook posts.
Has this ever happened to you? You're scrolling through your timeline on Facebook and pass an article that looks interesting, but you don't have time to read it. In an effort to save it, you may be tempted to share it so you'll know where to find it when you have time. But instead of sharing content with others that you haven't had a chance to read through yourself, Facebook has the option of saving links, videos, and events that appear in your timeline. When you see a post that you'd like to save for later with a link or a video, just click the arrow to the right of the post and you'll see the option to save the article. You can find it later at the top left corner in the Saved tab. In other developments, in recent weeks, Facebook has been rolling out a new set of tools aimed to help prevent suicide. As the World Health Organization reported last year, suicide accounts for over 800,000 deaths a year and is most prevalent among those between the ages of 15 to 29. If you see a post on Facebook that suggests suicide or self-injury, you can go to facebook.com/help and search for Report Suicidal Content. After you've filled the form with the information about the specific post that concerned you, Facebook will reach out to the individual, letting them know there was a concern and encouraging them to reach out immediately to someone they know or a professional for help. Facebook will also follow up, providing tips and additional support. You can learn more about the realities of mental health and resources linked at bit.ly.com/ANN mental health. The more you understand about issues relating to mental health, the better you can support those you love.
Now, let's turn to Benjamin Baker for a look at Adventist history. This week, learn about the life of the denomination's first female African-American missionary.
Welcome to This Week in Adventist History. The wisest man said that there's a time to be born and a time to die. This week in history was a time of both. On March 2 in 1887, John Lewis Schuller was born near Des Moines, Iowa. Schuller began to preach when he was 18 years old and did it for the next 7 decades, winning many thousands to Jesus. He was also a great teacher, training generations of ministers in effective evangelism at the Adventist Seminary. He died at 97. The next day, but 19 years earlier, in 1868, Hannah More died. One of the tragic stories in our history, More was led to Adventism through literature while a missionary in Liberia. Despite some 20 years in the mission field, More lost her position because of her new beliefs and returned to the U.S. In Battle Creek, More was without friends and support, yet the Adventists did little to help her. She died at 59 from heart failure. As a consequence of More's unfortunate end, the church formed the Seventh-day Adventist Benevolent Association, precursor to today's ADRA. Anna Knight was born on March 4 in 1874 in southern Mississippi. Famed in our church as the first black person of any denomination to be a missionary in India and the first black Adventist woman to do foreign missions, Anna Knight's other accomplishments should not be forgotten. For well over half a century, she was an activist for better schooling and medical care for underprivileged black children. And on March 5 in 1970, Henry de Flutter died. A native of Holland, de Flutter was a musician evangelist, directing music for scores of evangelistic programs and writing over 200 hymns, among them classics like Ride On King Jesus, Hail Him the King of Glory, and Over Yonder. And that was This Week in Adventist History.
Thanks for watching ANN. Join us next week for more news from the headquarters of the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
In the meantime, join our global conversation on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can connect with other Adventists worldwide through more stories, photos, and videos. Visit Facebook/Adventist News, Twitter/Adventist Church, and Instagram @Adventist Church.
Our good news for this week comes from 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verses 3 and 4. The passage says, "All praise to God, the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. God is our merciful Father and the source of all comfort. He comforts us in all our troubles, so we can be a comfort to others. When they are troubled, we will be able to give them the same comfort God has given us."
That's our program for this week. And remember, you can always visit news.adventist.org for daily news and videos. Until next time, God bless.
Take care.